on James Riady and the issues surrounding his leadership. He is from Malang, East Java, born in 1957. He has Chinese Indonesian heritage. He has a strong evangelical Christian faith, which has caused him some controversy. James is the son of Mokhtar Riady, founder of Lipo Group of Indonesia. James Riady quite successfully diversified Lipo Group, directing it towards financial, infrastructure, retail and property. Scandal aside, Riady is a highly successful and respected businessman and humanitarian. The Lipo Group has over 35,000 employees across Asia. The Lipo conglomerate is a Chinese-owned business in Indonesia, controlled by family members. In 2001, James Riady pleaded guilty for his actions of conspiracy towards campaigns of Bill Clinton and other US Democrats. In addition to these, critics have portrayed him as unforgiving to those who challenged his moral stance. Riady has also faced criticism because of their ethnicity as Chinese Indonesian. Polarizing the scandal and criticism, in 2011 honoured for his leadership abilities at Indonesian Property and Bank Awards. He is respected as a philanthropist and business leader and is the largest owner of private funded education in Southeast Asia, investing in Teachers Training College as well as contributed to Indonesia's economic growth in 2000s and future years. The space in which the Lipo Group predominantly is Indonesia. Although it's commonly perceived that Indonesian society is corrupt and full of deceit, the opposite is true for the broader Indonesian society. It is a highly honour-orientated society. The Indonesian people also place great importance on harmony and familiar respect. Establishing trust and goodwill is imperative for business success.
Broad issues and problems. Social responsibility and ethical behaviours, Chapter 5. International dimensions of management, Chapter 4. Controlling, Chapter 11. Leadership, Chapter 13. Culture, Chapters 3 and 4. Motivation and rewards, Chapter 15. Leading and managing change, Chapter 18. The key issues of the case study are those of cultural ethical significance, which ultimately affect James Riady leadership capacity. For example, culture, socio-cultural conditions, cultural relativism, Fiddler's contingency model, recovering from allegations and besmirch, helping with children's education, rationalization of behavior, corporate social responsibility, leadership.
Multinational corporations must be cautious to respect local cultures. It's often critiqued that MNCs have the tendency to extract excessive profits, dominate the local economy, interfere with local government, and have little respect for local customs and laws. Riady has also been subject to similar scrutiny for his personal ideals and how they affect the running of the Lipo Group. Importantly, leaders set the tone for how the company is perceived. Operating in a predominantly Muslim country such as Indonesia, Riady has been scrutinised for pushing his evangelical agenda onto the staff and beneficiaries of his humanitarian works. It's not enough in global business to simply be successful. It's important in global business that executives must understand and deal successfully in the general environment conditions that present differences in economic, legal, political, education systems. Leaders then must navigate these issues successfully as well as respectfully. Kirkpatrick and Locke have asserted that successful leaders are trustworthy, honest, and predictable. It's in these areas in which James Riady's leadership has been called into question. It is the perception of Riady's ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism is viewing one's own culture as better than others. This is particularly important to avoid in order to show respect and understanding for differences in culture. Religion is a particularly important cultural variable to be respected and understood. Riady does have some successes in this area. He is a philanthropist, he has a rapidly growing Lipo Group, he's successfully managed change in a time of uncertainty, he's shown a great concern for social welfare and development of education. However, he does have some failings, which is what has called him into question. This includes his unforgiving nature of challenges and doubt, the weariness of Chinese businessmen in Indonesia, the Clinton scandal, his Christian agenda, and his political connections to the US.
Relevant theory, ethics. Theory of reasoned action is based on the premise that an individual's behavior is determined by intentions. Two influencing factors are attitude and subjective norm. The first factor, attitude, is determined by a positive or negative response towards performing a behavior. Riady must have deemed his actions as favorable, as evidence shows that the 2001 case stated that Riady and others willingly conspired to defraud the United States by tampering and defeating governmental laws and the duties of the Federal Election Commission through duplicitous means. The second factor, subjective norm, is an individual's beliefs about another person's expectations and level of compliance of a behavior. The investigation into the Clinton campaign controversy showed that Riady did not act alone. John Hong, an employee of the Lipo Bank, was also involved and convicted alongside Riady. It has been proposed that organizational factors can have an influence on unethical behavior. Work associates can impact behavior and reinforce unsavory actions. Psychological egoism claims that individuals are motivated by self-interests and disregard altruism. The actions taken towards others will result in a benefit for themselves. The unethical behavior undertaken by Riady could have resulted in benefits such as financial gain or influence over government officials. After his conviction, Riady moved away from egocentric motives and adopted a more utilitarian view. This ethical stance states that behavior is performed for the greater good to benefit the greatest amount of people. He became concerned for societal social welfare, contributed to the promotion and development of education, and furthered economic growth.
Relevant theory, leadership. Nature. Leadership is becoming more and more challenging in more demanding ways. Leaders are expected to get things right the first time, with less likely for second chances. A leader must be good at dealing with all aspects of communication, interpersonal relations, motivation, job design, teamwork, and change. Riady was able to use reward power to manipulate others to get what he wants. This is a similar technique that Clinton used to Riady. Referent power. Riady influenced staff members and acquaintances to do things he wanted in order for them to maintain a positive relationship with him, as it was seen desirable. Particularly in Indonesian culture, it is important for subordinates to do what is pleasing for their bosses. This is known as asal bapak senang. In other words, keep your father happy, and it's the same attitude with bosses. Leadership style. Fiedler's contingency model. The model states that there is no one best style of leadership. Instead, a leader's effectiveness is based on the situation. This is the result of two factors: leadership style and situational favorableness. Fiedler believed that leadership style is fixed and it can be measured using a scale he developed called Least Preferred Co-worker Scale. Your score determines whether you are a relationship-orientated leader or a task-orientated leader. Riady changed location from the United States to Indonesia. He had to change his leadership style to adapt to the cultural difference and the new market environment. This shows his ability to adapt and change according to the Indonesian marketplace. Riady displays aspects of both leadership characteristics with his task-focused mind and looking after the well-being of his staff. However, this has only recently occurred because of the damage to his reputation and his need to rebuild it. Issues in leadership development. Transformational leadership. Riady is known to do anything to accomplish a task, even if it ends up with him getting in trouble. He has been known to push his staff to get day-to-day activities completed. No room for failure. These define the characteristics of a transformational leader.
Objectives. Culture. It has been identified that the disregard for culture is an issue. To stop the issue from escalating, the situation must both be addressed and rectified. It is supremely important to show cultural respect, particularly for leaders operating multinational corporations, such as Riady. Ethics. After identifying a problem and evaluating solutions, the next step is to recognize if the business decision is ethical. It is too important to consider the ethical aspects of a decision to sustain moral standards set by society. Taking a moment to ponder on decisions may also result in a rationalized decision making and prevent liability. Leadership. After identifying the key issues in one's leadership plan, they must also identify ways to rectify the situation. It's important to consider the attributes of a good leader and apply them to the situation. For example, James Riady changed his mentality from being the large business owner to going to a different country, following their values and letting them get to know him and earn respect from them before introducing himself as a business owner. This in turn allows the locals to respect Riady, and he therefore has a better chance of succeeding in that country.
Ethical action plan. The action to be taken for the first 6 months is to identify underlying ethical issues in the organisation. The use of an external consultant will help to address ethical behaviour and how to avoid any further malou. The action to be taken for the first 12 months is to create a set of ethical guidelines. The policies will oversee professional conduct within the workplace to safeguard and maintain the integrity of all employees. Human Resources is to develop an ethical code of conduct in accordance to organisational rules and regulations. The action to be taken from years 1 to 5 will consist of the guidelines being implemented and abiding by the ethical code of conduct across all departments, which will be carried out daily by all staff members. Ongoing training will be conducted by higher level management to deter liabilities and highlight the consequences of unethical behaviour.
Cultural action plan. Riady has been criticised heavily for his lack of respect for culture. In order to combat this, Riady himself and the conglomerate he leads must become culturally aware and respectful. We have put in place a framework for cultural education in the workplace. To sum up some Indonesian cultural principles, Asal Bokak Senang, which translates to keep your father happy. This also translates into the workplace as well, where Indonesian people are encouraged to keep their bosses happy and do whatever it takes. Another principle is avoid malu, which is embarrassment.
Leadership action plan. Within the first 3 months of the framework, the aim is to identify obstacles in leadership and ways to rectify these obstacles. This requires external leadership consultants to use their expertise with identifying the issues within the company and helping with techniques to implement the training. The implementation of managerial training should occur within the next 12 months, aiming to overcome the obstacles occurred within the company. This will involve staff leadership and bonding exercises that occur outside of the premises to create a stronger bond within the team, therefore creating a more positive atmosphere within the workplace. The goal for the next 1 to 5 years is to continue training among all staff via in-house trainers that are able to keep the staff updated in leadership knowledge and proactive about changes in the workplace environment.